Are you carrying something heavy right now? Why am I in so much pain? Why did that person do what they did? What's the point of any of this? Have you ever lain awake at night turning these questions over and over in your mind? There's something almost instinctive about it. The deeper the suffering, the more desperately we search for the reason behind it. If we could just find the answer, the root cause, maybe the pain would finally stop. So we think and think and think again, and yet nothing changes. If anything, the mind grows heavier. Today, I'd like to share with you something the Buddha said 2,500 years ago. Before you find the answer to your question, there is something you can do. Right now, today. Let's explore that together. Pause. There was once a man struck by a poisoned arrow. His family gathered around him, desperate to help, but he refused their aid. First, I must know who shot this arrow, he insisted. What is his name? What village does he come from? Is the arrow made of oak or pine? By the time he had answers to all his questions, the poison had already spread through his body. The Buddha asked, must we know these things before we remove the arrow? Or is there wisdom in attending to what needs healing first? About 2,500 years ago, there was a young disciple of the Buddha named Buddha. He was sharp, thoughtful, a genuine seeker, but sometimes that very sharpness became its own kind of suffering. One afternoon he sat alone, his mind spinning with questions. Is the universe eternal, or does it have an end? Is the soul separate from the body? Where do we go when we die? Does the Buddha exist after death or not? The questions kept coming, and yet the Buddha had never answered a single one of them. Why the silence? What was he hiding? Buddha made a decision. He rose to his feet and went directly to the Buddha. Venerable One, he said firmly, if you do not answer these questions today, whether the world is eternal, whether the soul is separate from the body, whether there is life after death, then I am leaving. I cannot continue as your disciple. The Buddha looked at him quietly. Then he asked, Buddha, did I ever promise you, when you first came to me, that I would answer all these questions? No, Venerable One, you did not. Then listen, said the Buddha gently, and he told this story. Suppose a man is struck by a poison arrow. It has pierced deep into his chest. He is in agony. His friends rush to find a doctor, but just as the doctor is about to remove the arrow, the man says, wait, before you take it out, I need to know who shot this arrow. What was his name? His family? Was he tall or short? What kind of wood is this arrow made from? What shape is the arrowhead? What is the bowstring made of? Tell me all of this first, and only then may you remove the arrow. Pause. The Buddha paused and looked at Buddha. What do you think would happen to that man? Buddha went still. He would die. Yes, said the Buddha softly, and it is exactly the same. You are the man with the poison arrow in your chest, Buddha. Your questions are not the cure. They are the delay. The arrow is suffering itself, and it does not wait for answers. The Buddha leaned forward slightly. Remove the arrow first. Then, if you still wish to know these things, you may ask. Perhaps that story landed somewhere tender. Pause. What the Buddha was offering Buddha and offering us was something beautifully simple and yet profoundly deep. Whether or not the universe is eternal, you can still find your way out of suffering. But if you leave the arrow in, you will die in your pain. The Buddha was not there to answer philosophical riddles. He was there to show us how to remove the arrow, the one that is already piercing your chest, right now. In Buddhist teaching, this is known as avyakata, often translated as the unanswered questions. The Buddha didn't refuse to answer out of stubbornness or mystery. He stayed silent because answering those questions would not, even slightly, ease the suffering in front of him. We tend to believe that if we could only understand why we are suffering, the suffering itself would lessen. But the Buddha says that is an illusion. What heals us is not knowing the origin of the arrow, it is knowing what to do with the wound. When someone hurts you, you can spend years analyzing whether it was their upbringing, their character, or circumstance that made them act that way, and your wound will not close. You will simply stand still inside your anger and grief. The path the Buddha offered was a practical one, the Eightfold Path, 8 gentle, grounded ways of living. No need to make it complicated. At its heart, it simply asks, in this moment, how am I thinking? How am I speaking? How am I acting? When we tend to those things, carefully, honestly, moment by moment, That is how the arrow is removed. The restless search for answers can itself become a way of staying in pain. That truth, spoken 2,500 years ago, has not aged a single day. A woman once came to the Buddha with this question: "If I practice your teachings, how long until I am free?" And the Buddha simply asked her, "Are you free right now, in this conversation with me?" She fell silent. In that silence, something shifted. The arrow did not need to wait for a distant promise of healing. It could begin to move now, in the very act of turning toward it with honest attention. So how do we bring this into our everyday lives? Pause. Think about the last time you made a mistake at work. What happened inside you? Why am I so useless? I've always been this way. Maybe this isn't the right job for me, maybe nothing is. Before long, a single misstep has become a trial, and you are judge, jury, and defendant all at once. This is precisely the man refusing to have the arrow removed until he knows every detail about the archer. In those moments, the Buddha's teaching quietly asks, what is the smallest thing you can actually do right now? If there's someone to apologize to, apologize today. If one habit needs adjusting, add just one small check tomorrow. That's enough. The question, why am I like this, has no power to pull the arrow out. It only drives it deeper. The same is true in relationships. When someone wounds you deeply, the mind wants to ask, what is wrong with that person? Why does this keep happening to me? But the longer you hold those questions, the longer the arrow stays in. What would make me feel just a little lighter today? Maybe it's saying something honest to a person you trust. Maybe it's walking outside and breathing real air. Maybe it's just making something warm to drink and going to sleep early tonight. Small is fine. Perfect is not required. A single step forward is enough. And there's one more thing worth holding: the courage to set down questions that have no answers. Why did I lose someone I loved? Why was I born into this family? Why does the world seem so unfair? Philosophers and monks have wrestled with these questions for thousands of years. They won't be resolved tonight. And they don't have to be, for you to live today. The Buddha says, set those questions gently aside, come back to the arrow. This is not avoidance. It is the deepest kind of attention, fully given to the life that is here right now. A woman I knew spent 3 years asking why her marriage ended before she realized she was still sleeping on the couch in that same house, unable to move forward. The day she stopped asking why, and instead asked, what room should I sleep in tonight, she finally left. It wasn't that the answer didn't matter, it was that her life couldn't wait for understanding to arrive. Just one thing to carry with you from today. Is there an arrow in your chest right now? The ache of being hurt by someone. The restlessness of things not going as you hoped. A quiet dread about the future. A disappointment in yourself you can't quite shake. Asking why is not wrong, but when the asking goes on, the arrow stays in, and time keeps moving. Just for today, give yourself a small rest from the searching, and then ask, what is the one smallest thing I can do right now in this moment? That is enough. That is the first pull on the arrow. When the Buddha spoke to that young disciple 2,500 years ago, I believe this is what he wanted him to understand, not a grand philosophy, but a quiet, compassionate invitation. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. May your days grow a little lighter, one small step at a time. A woman I knew once spent 3 years asking why her marriage had failed, turning the question over like a stone in her pocket until it wore smooth and became simply part of her weight to carry. One morning, she decided to water her garden instead. Just that one thing, and found herself breathing differently. This is not escape, this is the first honest movement toward healing.